Hi, I'm Sophie Williams. I'm the author of The Glass Cliff, and here are some things that I think all women in business should know. The first thing that I think women in business need to know is that life is so much easier when we choose to collaborate over choosing to compete. And for so long in business, we've been told that there's only a need or a room for one senior woman, one woman who's smashing it. But in reality, we know that there's more than enough to go around. And so what I encourage all women to do is when you go into a new place, when you start a new job, when you scan the office and you find these incredible, sparkling people who feel like your biggest competition, instead of competing with them, decide to collaborate. Look around and find those incredible, sparkling women and say, "You're my friend now." Suddenly this amazing talent who you were so intimidated by, you've got their back and they've got yours. And you say their names in rooms of opportunity and they say yours as well. And before you know it, everyone is shining. And everyone is shining so much that you don't know where that initial spark of brilliance came from. And it doesn't matter. The next thing that I want women in business to be aware of is what I call the glass menagerie. So my book, The Glass Cliff, is about one of those. It's the glass cliff. But the first step in a lot of women's careers and a lot of women's journeys to senior leadership is breaking through the glass ceiling, that invisible but seemingly impossible to break through barrier that sits above the heads of women in business and stops them from not only reaching the pinnacles of professional success, but the pinnacles of their own personal abilities. So I want you to be aware of the glass ceiling, be aware that it's there, but also be aware that you can break through. The Glass Cliff looks at what the experience is for so many women once they have broken through that glass ceiling. And unfortunately, what so many women find is they find themselves in a new, invisibly dangerous situation. They find themselves on the edge of a glass cliff. And that's because women in business, women in the most senior leadership positions, tend to only find themselves being given those opportunities to lead when there's some kind of moment of problem, when there's some kind of moment of crisis, some kind of issue within the business that women are expected to come in and solve or clean up. That's not to say that there are no examples of successful women in business. Of course there are. But I think the more we can be aware of the challenges that women in business are likely to face, the better we can do to assess opportunities, take those that are really right for us, and go in with our eyes open to not only understand, but try to avoid the glass cliff. The final element of the glass menagerie is the glass escalator. So whilst women, when they become senior, have broken through the glass ceiling and are working often on the edge of a glass cliff, when we look at men, particularly white men, in female-dominated industries, what we see is the inverse of that. What we see is something called the glass escalator. And as the escalator suggests, it means that these men are getting a fast track to the top. If you've ever looked at a business and wondered why there were so many women in the main body of the business, so many women in those entry-level and junior roles, but then when you looked at the top, it's only white men, that's often because of the glass escalator. And I've got a stat to share with you about the NHS that really puts that into perspective. So in the NHS, men represent just 31% of the total workforce. However, they hold 42% of the most highly paid jobs. Women in the NHS, on the other hand, women who make up the vast majority of the NHS employees, they hold 78% of the lowest paid jobs within the organisation. The final thing that I want all women in business to be aware of is the concept of think crisis, think female. So you might have heard of think manager, think male, and that talks about our predisposition to presume that leaders will be men. So often when we think of a leader in a business, the image that comes to mind is of someone who is male. And that goes a long way to explaining why the glass cliff as a phenomenon might even exist. Why are women more likely to be brought into businesses when there's a problem to solve or a crisis to manage? Well, it's likely to be because of the phenomenon that's known as think female, think crisis. Whilst our archetypal vision for who leads best is, in most circumstances, men, what we see is when there is a crisis, that archetype shifts. It shifts to think crisis, think woman. When you need someone who's soft and caring, when you need some soft skills or some nurturing, when you need someone to be your office mum, to bring morale back up and to raise spirits, that's more often than not when we see women being finally given the opportunity to lead. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found our conversation about women in business interesting. If you did, The Glass Cliff by me is available to pre-order now.